So this is the first of two short screencasts, giving you a little bit more detail on what I mean by the term attending behaviour and how it fits in relation to our communication skills and the dietetic skills we are developing on this module. So this pyramid is quite useful because we are going to look at attending behaviour, which is the foundation on which our active listening skills can be developed and on which we can add strategies such as motivational interviewing or using cognitive behavioural strategies. But things like motivational interviewing are no good if you can't already demonstrate active listening. And active listening has got this foundation of attending behaviour. So we're going to focus on attending behaviour first, that foundational level. Now, a lot of you will already have a lot of these skills, but what we're going to do is to unpack them a bit and look at them in what I call micro skills. So we're looking at the minute detail to make sure that we've got those foundations well established. So Ivy et al. Have been working on communication skills for decades, and I love this quote from them. Listen, 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 and then listen some more before taking action or giving advice. And one of the things that dietitians are often very good at is giving advice. But sometimes we do that when the patient's not ready to hear that advice. So we need to be focusing first on the listening. Why are we doing that? Because often people can resolve a lot of their issues on their own. They can do that problem solving if we just give them time to think it through. It helps people to find their own strengths. And bear in mind that as a dietitian, you will be seeing a patient maybe for half an hour, maybe less, maybe more. That person's got to live with their condition and put into action changes for the rest of their life. Presumably, if it's a long-term condition, sometimes, of course, it's shorter. But they need to find the strength within themselves in order to be able to do that. And it's fundamental to the helping process. If we're going to be good helpers, we need to be good listeners. And as we develop those skills, we can develop skills to be empathic, and that develops a relationship with our service users. So listening is going to be foundation, but that's kind of easier said than done. So we're going to go back even further and think more about how we listen well. So the focus for this module is going to be meeting and greeting. It's going to be learning more about attending behaviour. We're going to be thinking about questions and invitations to talk. And of course, that's going to be very important as we look at our typical day type skills. We are going to learn about clarifying and encouraging, something called minimal encouragers. And we are going to be learning about something called restating or verbal following. So we're actually going to look at these skills in a little bit more detail. In the second block, we will integrate those skills with a typical day. So we're going to use attending behaviour and active listening while talking about food intake and trying to find out where food and drinks fit into that service user day. And we will be encouraging our service user to talk openly about their food intake and the things that impact on it. Later on in the course, we're going to add more skills. We're going to focus later on paraphrasing, reflecting feelings or emotions, and summarising. And again, some of you may already be doing these things, but we're going to unpack them and look at them in small detail. So let's just start thinking about what we mean first by attending behaviour. So this is individually and culturally appropriate verbal and non-verbal behaviour. So both are really important. So what we say, but how we convey what we say and what our body is saying at the same time. And it's thinking about culturally appropriate eye contact, our vocal tone, our body language. So if we have good attending behaviour, that conveys to the patient that we're listening and it encourages them to talk further. And one of the key words here is culturally appropriate. So if you work with people from different cultures, it's important to learn what's appropriate for them. Some people won't want to make a lot of eye contact. Eye contact may be seen as confrontational, but we need to make sure we're also not making assumptions. So we need to allow the service user to lead us in a way. But many people who've come from different cultural backgrounds, of course, are acculturated. They are used to being in the UK. They may have been born here. So they may react in a mixed culture way. So making assumptions is really important. And you'll find in our standards of proficiency, the whole idea of being culturally appropriate, considering the different ways that people may want to communicate is going to be really important. So that includes all differences. So we're going to explore in a bit more detail what we might mean. And we are initially focusing on what might be more appropriately in UK culture, but we also may have that idea of thinking outside the box and thinking about different people as well and what might work for them. So let's start with eye contact. This whole idea of body language is really important and often said, if you read the literature, it's quite variable numbers, but often said that up to 85% of communication is non-verbal. And yet we often think more about what we're going to say, the words we're going to use, rather than how we're conveying them or what our body is saying. So think about, what gets in the way of us looking at that other person. So we encourage you to look at the person, don't stare, don't completely focus on people, but have natural eye breaks, eye contact breaks. Thinking what gets in the way, you've got to make notes. You may need to use a computer. You may need to be doing something that takes your eye contact away from that individual. How do they feel about that? What is that saying to them about your interest in them? So we need to think about that aspect of what we do that gets in the way, and perhaps just say, I'm just going, is it all right? I've just make some notes, because people know you're going to do that, but then they also recognize that you will need to look away. And you could just apologize. I need to write some things down, but keep looking up, keep giving your attention back to that person. What gets in the way of their eye contact with you? It could be that their mental health's very poor. It could be that they have a visual impairment and that although you are trying to look directly at them, they may appear to be looking over your shoulder because they can't see very well. Sometimes it's embarrassment or guilt. Depression often makes people not give eye contact. A whole range of things. It could be someone who has autistic spectrum disorder who may feel very differently about giving you eye contact. So think about that and what might be going on there. And then there's our body language. What's that saying to our service user or patient? Are you to make you in a hurry? You speaking fast to try and get through things really quickly? Are you standing back? Have you got your arms crossed? So, what's your posture saying? It should be saying, I'm interested. I'm relaxed. I have time for you today. So we don't want our hands round our faces. We want to keep our face clear and visible to people. Are we conveying that we are there in the room, giving them their attention at that particular time? Are we responding? If the patient smiles, are we responding to them? What's going on with them? What is their body language telling us? Do they look tense? Do they look anxious? Are they distressed? So we have to be really attentive. And what we need to be mindful of is having our own style that is comfortable for us, but making sure that that comfort for us isn't causing any barriers with anyone else. So all of those different things can make a difference to how we come across. Our vocal style is very, very individual. Some of us may speak quicker than others. Some of us are quite quiet, and some of us may have sharper tones than others. So we've got to be really mindful. And often if we're in a rush, our speed, volume, and tone change quite a lot. So we might be communicating something completely different to how we want to because of the tone of our voice. Are we noting whether that person has a hearing impairment and whether our volume is enough? Are we speaking really quickly to someone whose first language isn't English and making it harder for them? So thinking through that, when we're learning, we often get more nervous. We often therefore speak much more quickly. So that can be something to be really conscious of. We may be hesitant if we're anxious. That's something that affects people quite a lot, and you get lots of ums and ahs and in a conversation, which makes it seem quite bitty. So as we get more confident, those anxiety levels go down. But don't forget, it's not just you that might be feeling anxious if you're doing more of a consultation than you're used to, but it may also be the patient that's anxious for some reason. So trying to convey calm to our patient is really important, both physically and vocally. If we are emotional or cross or irritated, that often comes out when we're speaking. So again, be mindful of it. And you're an individual. How do you respond when you're under stress or time pressure or anxious? Become more self-aware about how your vocal style could be coming over to somebody. Minimal encouragers are a mixture of verbal and non-verbal. And the non-verbal includes some of those things we've just been talking about eye contact, our posture, nodding. And we've got to get a balance there. So we're nodding in response. We're not just nodding continuously, because that doesn't have any meaning and is also potentially quite irritating. We need to be friendly and smiling, but if someone's just told you that they're actually quite distressed because the dog's just died, you don't smile. You've got to be smiling in response, and starting with smiling so that you are appearing a welcoming person. And sometimes one of the things that can encourage people to speak more is silence. Just not rushing in to add your next question, but just to give people a bit of thinking time. So be mindful of those things that we need to be doing that are non-verbal. In relation to verbal, we are talking about neutral words that encourage people to keep talking. So that includes, oh, so, oh, and then. So you're encouraging people to continue talking. Sometimes it could be a short phrase, you tell me more, or go on. And often we think of these things as, uh-huh, those kind of non-word type things that we might do as well. So those are things that are appropriate, but you might want to think about what is unhelpful. And I can promise you that I will be picking up on those in the workshops, and so will Katie, if these are things that you do a lot of. And those words are things like, yeah, 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 okay, okay. And some of us use words like, yeah, okay, right, frequently throughout our conversations. But all of those words are professing agreement. They're suggesting that you agree with somebody. And if you're in the habit of using those, you can end up using them inappropriately. So if someone has just said, actually, I've reached the stage where I'm drinking a bottle of vodka every night, and you go, okay, oh, it's all right then. I don't need to worry about drinking a bottle of vodka every night. So those kinds of things can be really unhelpful, and we will be encouraging you not to use okay, yeah, and right on a regular basis.